Welcoming everybody into the latest edition of the USFL Podcast Interview Series, bringing you the latest from players, coaches, personalities, anyone from around the league that might bring interest to you and to me as well. Today, we bring in another player that is just joining up for the 2023 season, one that is very much I would say acclaimed in terms of the awards for his FCF dominance on the defensive side of the ball. He is going to be future Pittsburgh Mauler Vaughn Taylor Jr., who is joining us for this latest edition of our interview series. Vaughn, first off, as I say with any new players, congrats on being signed to the Maulers. Welcome to the USFL this season. I'm looking forward to seeing you hit the field here and training camp later on this spring. How you doing, man? What's keeping you busy right now?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I would say mainly just working out. You know, I'm in the gym 4 to 5 days a week, and I'm with my defensive line coach, or I should say trainer here back home 3 to 4 times a week as well. So just staying busy, working, grinding, and I've also had my head in the playbook a little bit so far.
Nice. Jaron will be very pleased. He will definitely like to hear that. Oh man, as they call him on the USFL network, the mad scientist himself. He'll be glad to have you. And obviously we're gonna get in and if Maulers fans are wondering, what you bring to the table, we'll definitely be hitting on that here today. I always start out with players, just kind of the background and kind of tracing the steps back to kind of beginnings in football here. So, I think we'll kind of dive in more to college scene, but I'd like to hear kind of your route to college. I know you had a few different SKUs and you went a few different places, or had a possible commitment, I believe, to the Naval Academy. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming out of high school, I was kind of under recruited just because of my size, I should say. But I still had a good amount of offers coming out. I actually committed to the Naval Academy. During that time, I believe they were top 25, and going to one of those games, I don't know, it just did something for me. So I committed there, and then later down the line, I actually, took a step back and then thought about it outside of football, and asked myself, like, was Navy something I want to long term, or was I just doing it all for the wrong reasons? As far as just going in there for football, which football would have been a lot of my time, but not as much as me preparing for the Navy or at least learning about the Navy.
Sure.
So I ended up decommitting from there. Talked to the head coach or the defensive line coach, Jesse Williams, who had actually been at Ohio University prior to being the defensive line coach at Kansas. We had a connection through one of my high school head coaches. They did like a coaches clinic together, and they had got some conversation in about me. Ended up deciding to go to the Naval Academy. At first, I was supposed to be on scholarship once camp had started, but money issues, especially when you're coming in that late, the money wasn't there. So for the first year, I had to actually be a preferred walk-on, which for me, earning my keep was nothing I ever had a problem with. So I went in for the first year, played as a true freshman, I believe, in 4 or 5 games. And just as far as like the money aspect, it was kind of a burden. And for me, I knew I can play elsewhere. Not saying that I couldn't play at Kansas, but just as far as, like I said, the money aspect. So I ended up not even really waiting it out in the transfer portal. I really pretty much just bet on myself and said, if I can ball, then the next level will find me. So I went to go ahead to Morehead State, which I had connections there already through like family members and high school teammates. I went to Morehead State University and actually, made the most of my opportunity. And I ended up here.
Yeah, I mean, talking about that, and it's only, I mean, this is still pretty recent that you just got out of essentially your college football career. I mean, 2021 was your last full season. So what have you, so I was looking back and I could be wrong. How have you been spending I guess the in-between past year? I understand you're very much, adamant, you keep the training going. You very much want to keep yourself, ready for that next opportunity. Has that been the sole drive so far? How have you been keeping that year going?
So pretty much so after pro day and whatnot, waiting it out, trying to hear things back. After not hearing anything back, I actually decided to enroll back into Morehead State University because I want to say the spring semester, I had actually took that semester off to train for pro day.
Okay.
So once I re-enrolled, I actually finished up. I had one class and an internship to complete. And with my internship, I actually was an assistant coach with the defensive line at Morehead State University. So I spent a lot of time with the D-line, with a few guys that I played with, essentially just passing off the knowledge that I knew. And then a pretty cool thing was my defensive line coach, he kind of trusted me as far as the pass rush aspect goes. So I was able to get the guys for a few periods during practice and kind of teach them what I knew. And it was just pretty cool to have guys that you play with kind of look up to you and ask you questions and whatnot to kind of pick your brain, because it not only helped me as a player, but it also helped me, get some practice in for what I want to do next, which is coaching after my playing career is over.
I hadn't
And
thought
then,
about that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I hadn't thought about that. That's actually a really great point. You also basically get to kind of, I guess, collaborate in terms of a mental sense on more of what you're trying to do. Because you're still a young athlete. Like I said, you're only 1 year removed from your college career, and this year you're going to finally get back to hit the field. So, that's nice to kind of have not only the training aspects where you're keeping yourself ready, but you also get to go, hey, here's where I can keep working on my game. Once I get that next opportunity, I can test and put myself to the test and on film with that.
absolutely.
So that's pretty sweet. And look, I guess on the reverse side of it, you're going back to coach. You have, of course, the accolades to boot. The Buck Buchanan Award in terms of FCS. That's at the same level as, say, like the Bronco Nagurski Award at FBS level for Defensive Player of the Year for that level of football. Multi-time All-American in the Pioneer League for Morehead State. So the accolades are definitely there. Something that I was fascinated. Again, I did a little bit kind of backtracking. Just wanted to. When I follow up with players, I always like hearing some things if I get a chance from other interviews. I one that stood out had recently, it was about the lifestyle between the FBS level and the FCS level, comparing how Kansas works compared to, say, like a Morehead State in terms of independence and how players operate, which, college athletes, it is especially depending on the level, it is a toll. Would you care to elaborate on that?
So I would say Kansas, we pretty much had our days mapped out for us. We had this app, I forget the name of it, but basically, once you would get out of one class, you'll have a text message saying, okay, you have to have tutoring, or you have to be at tutoring in 10 minutes. And then once you finish tutoring, you'll also get another alert and say, okay, you have to be at class at this point. So pretty much, like I said, at Kansas, everything was mapped out for you. So it was pretty easy as far as like time management because it was managed for you. Transferring to Morehead State was kind of different just because we don't have all the resources that the Power Five or the FBS schools would have, with it being a small FCS school. So the time management thing was something I had to learn, on my own, especially coming in because, like I said, I was used to, how pampered we was at Kansas, and I actually liked it just because it forced me to, be more independent and be more responsible, honestly.
Nice. It's funny. We talk about that, and I'm thinking, well, if you take that Naval Academy role, they'll make sure you definitely have time management.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I find it fascinating because a lot of these guys, like you're use an example. There's a lot of FCS players that, or at least there are plenty of FCS players in the USFL and these other leagues, that are getting the second level of talent. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You're getting a chance to at least experience a second opportunity with this. How do you look at the landscape of football opportunities? You were almost signed to the Albany Empire, or at least you had a contract with them until this opportunity in the USFL came up as well.
So for me personally, I'll just say it's about staying ready. It's pretty hard to do, but it's just about staying ready. I knew that me and my agent, we would always talk about, we knew that I can play at a high level. It's just a matter of time of when. And, some guys, they kind of, get discouraged during this process. But for me, I always had faith and kept faith and knew that, I would be playing at the next level. Whether it took me going through the Albany Empire to get here, or if it was, straight from college to here, or whatever the case may be, I always knew that I could play at a high level. And that's something that I stood on. So I just continued to work as if, I automatically knew that my opportunity was coming. Whether it came or whether it didn't, I just continued to work as if, the opportunity was going to be there.
Mm-hmm. And that's all you can really do. You make sure you keep yourself ready, you keep your opportunities ready. Everything I've talked with players, you coordinate with your agent, you make sure when your agent coordinates and talks with you, you are you're at least as available as possible to get things and discuss things with them right away. It's definitely a process, at least the more that I've talked over the years talking with players, that is certainly what I've gotten for yourself. And I'd love to expunge a little bit on the Albany Empire opportunity myself. And because I asked, So the NAL, it was going to do it's Ironman football. And I know you're not playing there currently. Yes, it's more like a rights deal, honestly, at this point, just
Yeah.
how those contracts go. But you were going to be joining essentially Ironman style football. Have you any experience with offensive line? Were you planning on playing both ways?
So actually, no. I was actually going to go in as a specialist, so I would have just been a pass rush specialist, which I was actually glad that kind of worked out because the only other position I had played on offense, which was in high school, was wide receiver, and at this point, I'm a little too heavy to play wide receiver.
Really? You played right receiver, huh?
Yep.
So now I'm curious, what had you transition over to DB? Or sorry,
So
DE, not
yeah, I
DB.
got you.
DE.
So basically, so I went to Friendship Public Charter School, which is the same school that Yannick Ngakoue went to.
Okay.
So me and him kind of have a relationship. We actually train with the same trainers and whatnot.
No kidding.
But so my head coach in high school, at wide receiver, I was more of the blocking receiver. Like I had a few catches here and there, but I was more of a blocking wide receiver, like being physical. So when they brought me in the office at the end of my freshman season, they said, you know what, we think coaches would be more attracted to you with you coming off the edge. And at first, I didn't really like it at all. Like I was still my sophomore year, I would still go in and pregame warm up. I'll be with the wide receivers, but I essentially would be playing defensive line. So my sophomore year, they didn't really bother me too much about it just because I was playing behind a guy who was going big anyway. So I didn't really see the field as much my sophomore year. But once my junior and senior year came around, they were kind of adamant, like, you have to take it serious because we think that you have a real opportunity here. And, I'm glad I listened to him because it actually worked out in my favor. I mean, my senior year of high school, I actually broke Yannick Ngakoue's sack record. I had 23 sacks my senior year. And, I came out with the guys such as Chase Young, Jalen Twyman, who went to Pitt, had 10.5 sacks, the first one to do it since Aaron Donald. Luigi Villain, he went to, I want to say, Wake Forest. I think he's with the Vikings now. So we had a talented group coming out that year. So I was pretty glad that, I actually listened to him and, took the opportunity because now I ended up, this far along. I doubt I would have made it this far if I would have kept playing wide receiver.
Right. Well, look, the more I think about it, I mean, I'm just starting to think receiver principles, mechanics. I gotta assume the stance has to play a part in both of those roles. I mean, if you're at least if you're especially doing more of the stand-up outside rush, I feel like that some of those principles of kind of having the correct foot leading right, if you're depending on what side you're on. Which side do you prefer to rush from, by the way, or do you not want to spoil that for people analyzing your film?
Well, honestly, I do have a favorite side, which is my left side, but my trainer, he kind of forces me to, try to be more balanced. So I work all my moves on both sides, just try to be more balanced. That way, I don't have a weakness in my game. I know some players. I mean, and even if you see it in the NFL, some players they'll play both sides, but they'll play with a bastardized stance on one side. So it's just all about being balanced and feeling comfortable. Me personally, I play with my inside foot back as opposed to my outside foot back. So it's just all about being comfortable and being balanced. So what I could do on my left side, I can do on my right side. It may be a little better on my left side, but I'm pretty balanced, I'd say.
See, I'll be honest, I used to be one of those guys that even when coaches would tell me, hey, if you're on the left, you better put your stance in the correct form so that you're starting with the correct foot forward. I'm one of those people, I could never adjust to it. I always kept the same stance either place I was on for DL. I was D-line, though, so I didn't have to worry about the rush on the outside. I was slow as dirt, so I didn't have to worry about the speed rushes or anything like that. But I completely relate. So you're joining the Maulers. Obviously, last year, you know, not too great of a year. We've talked to plenty of Maulers coaches, personalities. I mean, we talked both the OC and DC on this show already. So Darren obviously, or sorry, Jaron, why I said that way. Jaron obviously knows, what is ahead. And that unit was already pretty strong last year. You're joining at least a group of guys that, got a lot of recognition from the NFL in terms of guys getting signed on to camps and still has some pretty decent talents coming back. What, especially as you throw joining the Maulers for 2023?
I'll say, like you said, coming into a group of guys that already, pretty much kind of solidified themselves. And honestly, I'm one of those guys that's coming in. I'm looking to add in where I can and also learn. So I feel like as long as we can do that and be cohesive and play off each other, I feel like that's when those type of units, defensive line, front seven guys, usually play the best.
All right. Well, I think that's a good way of putting it, man. I mean, you're going to be on the same line as like Boogie Roberts out there too, who should have much more of a healthier season, and for example, people saw what Carlos Kemp did last year, and that's going to be the spot you're going to be stepping into.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually, once I figured out, I'll be signing with the Maulers, I actually did my research, went in and seen, I actually looked at the full league stats as far as like who led the league in sacks and whatnot, watch a few highlights, trying to steal some of their moves and whatnot.
Gotta get that edge. Playing in the North, man. It's gonna be, like I said, tough challenge in generals and the stars. Got to get back to those QBs, no matter who they are, whether it's DeAndre Johnson or whoever Philadelphia brings back at some point, if it's Thompson or Case Cook is. So, gotta be ready. For yourself, as well. So you're looking at the playbook. I know some position groups are talking to coaches already. At least doing some Zoom meetings. Are you doing Zoom meetings with the coaching staff right now every once in a while, kind of keeping progress tabs on how you're kind of retaining things?
I haven't really been on any Zoom meetings. I've actually, I got the playbook. That's pretty much it. And I've been looking in, and I ask questions whenever I can. But I'm honestly just ready, to continue to just learn. I've been, like I said, pretty much just learning on my own so far with what they provided us as far as like the film, the playbook. I talked to Nasir a little bit about the playbook.
Okay.
Just so he just told me, if I had any questions, I can go ahead and, hit him up. So I've just been, pretty much diving in as much as I can and trying to, bite off as much as I can. So that way, once we get into training camp, I'm not too far behind, because at the end of the day, coming in, especially being a new guy, the last thing you want to do is hold the group back.
Right. Yeah. Well, you want to keep momentum, at least on that side of the ball that was there last year. So I completely understand. Before we head out, and I thank you again for joining us for this conversation. I want to ask you, what are some personal goals for you this season? I know I feel like every player, they got their own certain set of things they want to look for, but obviously it is a team sport. But in particular, what are some things you're trying to target, at least in this 2023 year, starting in April?
Honestly, I don't really have any numerical goals. I would say, first, as a team, I want to see us do a little better, because of course team success breeds individual success. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes along to myself, I want to just be able to prove not only to myself, but to the league, my teammates, everyone else, that as far as pass rushing and whatnot, and coming from a smaller school, like, we can do it. So I want to be able to become a force in this league, off the edge, coming off and being able to provide more production in the statistical area as far as sacks go.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Vaughn. I appreciate your time, man. Gonna be watching you out there, and best of luck, heading into training camp and everything as the off season progresses, man. It's an exciting year ahead. And I think you're joining a team that, at least to many of us, believes is going to be on an upswing compared to last season. So best of luck to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.